Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar where Sabu and I will deep dive into the insights we gained from the best workplaces in Switzerland 2024. Today, we will be sharing our key takeaways from the data insights and show you how leadership effectiveness impacts pride, employee engagement, and overall satisfaction. My name is Lorena, and I work in marketing and communications with Great Place to Work for a bit more than 3 years. And together with Sabu, we wrote the data insights report you'll hear about today.
Yeah, and my name is Sabu. Hi, everyone. I have been working for Great Place to Work for 2.5 years now, and I am a data analyst here, and I'm super excited to talk about my topic of passion today, which is data.
Great. So before we get started, if you have any questions now or during our conversation, we invite you to ask them anytime. You can submit them directly via LinkedIn by commenting, and we try to take them up during our conversation where it fits or at the end of the webinar during the Q&A section. Also, you don't need to screenshot anything during the presentation. You can just download the free data insights by scanning the QR code here below. Great. So before we start with the data, for the ones that don't know us yet, for over 30 years, Great Place to Work has been on a mission to help every place become a great place to work for all. And we do this by giving leadership and organizations the tools and also the recognition to create a positive work environment for everyone. We also do this by serving millions of employees worldwide in what makes a great place to work. Concretely, we work with 18,000 organizations, 20 million of employees in over 170 countries annually. In order to determine the best workplaces in Switzerland 2024, we have surveyed over 76,900 employees, worked with 251 organizations, and awarded the 65 best workplaces in Switzerland 2024, which you can see here.
Well, but now, of course, we want to get into how exactly we did that. How did we get to these 65 organizations that you can see on screen right now? And honestly, at the end of the day, it all comes down to trust, which you can see on this graph, which I'm showing you right now, and which I'm also just going to go into a little bit before we jump into the data itself. What you can see here is our fundamental belief and understanding a great place to work, which is that a great workplace is defined by trust, pride, and camaraderie for all. But this is not just something we came up with out of the blue. We really have a model underlying everything here. And within this model, it all starts with leadership. And leadership, again, consists of three key keywords, which are respect, credibility, and fairness. If leadership is respectful with the employees, if leadership is fair in how they treat them, and if their actions and their behavior is credible towards what the organization stands for, they create an environment in which a trust-based workplace culture can be fostered. And that, of course, has amazing consequences for the entire organization, which we will hear all about today. First of all, is that if employees work in an organization where they can trust their leaders, they are proud of what they do because they identify with what they do, which is our second dimension, pride, which you can see on the top right. And of course, pride relates to the work itself, but you can only be proud of the work you do if you're also proud of the people you work with and for. And working in an organization where you have strong leadership, credible leadership, and a job that you really like doing, of course, also attracts like-minded people, which definitely doesn't hurt in having a great camaraderie, which is our third dimension at the team dimension at the in the top right. And that all together makes up our model for great workplace culture for all. And that for all keyword is the last aspect which we can see, which means that we believe that a great workplace is not only for the apprentice or the CEO, but really should be something for every single person that works at this organization.
So how does it look like for the best workplaces in Switzerland this year?
Yeah, that is a great question because I'm sure some of you will already know how we come to these assessments of great workplace culture, but for those of you that don't, I'll just quickly explain that again. We measure these dimensions that I just presented you on the last slide with our so-called trust index, which is 60 statements, which all cover these 5 areas which I described. And for all 60 statements, employees, like literally the employees that work for these organizations, so we really survey live people that work in these places that we award, can give an endorsement rate, which ranges from I do not agree with this statement at all, up to I completely agree with this statement. And in our best workplaces, 2024, so those 65 organizations, 86% of our employees that we surveyed said that they endorse those statements. So this is really high. For context, for reference, we also do a representatives benchmark study every 3 years with an external company. So these are not employees that are surveyed by us, but literally just some random companies in Switzerland. And in those companies, only 61% of people endorse these 60 statements. So that's quite a big gap. This gap is actually 25%, which in my opinion is quite markant. Yeah, and for those 60 statements, of course, we now also wanted to know, well, which statements are those that really make an employee say, or which areas are those that really make an employee say, hey, all in all, this really is a great place to work. And to determine that, we always conduct a so-called driver analysis each year. And this is the moment where it gets a little bit statistical, because before I can tell you all about what exactly this driver analysis came down to, I just have to very quickly explain what we even did. Well, what did we do? We checked for all the 60 statements, which statements make an employee more likely to say, all in all, this is a great place to work. And if many employees rated a statement highly, that also rated the statement, this is a great place to work, highly, this is a stronger driver, because we see that it really influences this overall perception. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I find super interesting here is that we talked about pride, which is important. And also we see here that pride ranks up quite high. So when looking at all those statements that drive a high perception of workplace culture, we see that pride is quite up there.
Yeah, that's something super interesting, which we can see today, because we always do this with the, we do this every year for our best workplaces. We always analyze as well what changed, like how is the workplace culture, the perception shifting from year to year. And you can see in 2023, most of those statements concerning pride in what you do and really the perception of the organization you work for were already high. Like, it's not that they came out of nowhere, but we can really see this shift of importance, how this becomes more and more a central focus of what employees really value in their employer. What we can also see, and I think this is also super interesting, is of course the absolute numbers. So as you can see, every year we survey like 250 plus organizations. So that means we get a lot of data. And you also saw that only 65 of those made it on the best workplaces list. That means we have some differences between those that are awarded and those that are not. And where we see that these differences are particularly high is in one very specific dimension, which is also super curious. And that dimension is leadership. So leadership seems to be the one thing where it's really, really differentiated between those that are great workplaces and those that are already doing many things good, but are not quite there yet. And maybe some of you now remember, yeah, that's exactly what we had at the very beginning. A good leadership with a good foundation is so important to build everything else on, especially the pride, which is such an important driver for workplace culture. So there's really no surprise that there are really big differences there, but you can also see in our data that those differences are really quite markant.
Yeah, why is this leadership statements or this leadership effectiveness so important? I let the statement stand for itself for a moment. It sounds very marketing-y. So what does this exactly mean? Let's dive into it.
Yeah, and of course, I, as the data analyst, now have to bring the data pendant to Lorena's marketing perspective, which is, of course, absolutely correct. Great starts with leadership. Perception of management is such an important differentiator how employees in organizations perceive their overall workplace culture. And as already said, it's incredibly important that you have credible management in your organization. So that really means that what people say, they also stand by and also live by. It's so important that you have fair managers so that people are treated equally, that people feel seen, and of course also that you have respectful management, which is naturally kind of a consequence of fair and credible behavior. What you can also see on the right-hand side is that people in best workplaces, so awarded workplaces, are 55% more likely to say that they trust the judgment of their executive team a great deal. And again, this is such a huge and important statement, because if you trust your leadership, you actually stand behind what they do, and you actually all go into the same vision and the same goal moving forward, which we can also see in the next data that I'm going to talk about, which is experience. Leadership, good leadership, shapes good experience. And as you can see in our subtitle, a trust in leadership, so exactly what we have, 55% more likely to trust in their executives' decisions, shapes pride and shapes how employees experience the place they work for. And again, employees that have a great deal of trust in their leadership are 5 times more likely to say that they are proud of what their organization accomplishes. And this is also such a huge thing to be, because I think everyone in this meeting today works for an organization, and everyone knows how important it is, how my feeling towards the place I go to every single day, 42 hours a week, is for the way I experience my workplace culture. So really what I'm trying to get across here is our data has very strong evidence that having a good coherent foundation with fair and respectful principles at the base of your organization is what drives your employees to like coming to work and say, yes, what we do here, that's really a thing that I can stand behind.
And I think that's also what we saw in the driver analysis a couple of slides back, is that pride is super, super important to determine whether employees think this is a great place to work.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, that's also, again, you're picking up such a great point here, because we really see that those employees that have this high pride, so as you said in the driver analysis, those are also the employees that agree with overall workplace culture to be good, like 86% endorsement rate. That's huge. Of course, one aspect which we really can't forget, especially because we talk about workplace culture so much, is the word, like, how experience shapes the culture. As I said, if I am proud of a place I work at, I usually also perceive the place as a place I want to be. And culture means so many things, but of course it boils down to trusting each other, trusting management, trusting your team. We also get the team spirit in here, having teamwork, having colleagues that you really see eye to eye on. And last but not least, of course, hugely important keyword, innovation. If I'm in a place where I not only feel supported by my management in being capable of fully developing my potential, but I also have colleagues which really enable and support me, I also have an environment where I can innovate and find new and better things and see how I, as an employee, can move this organization forward. And again, that we see in our data. That's not just something I claim here in this webinar, that we can really see. Mainly, we can see that 47% of employees are 47% more likely to say that the company encourages people who try new and better ways of doing things, regardless of the outcome. Also super important if they have a good foundation. So once again, just such a big deal, how it all starts, how it all comes down to.
Yeah, and we had the great starts with leadership. Leadership shapes experience, experience shapes culture, and culture drives performance. But what does performance actually mean? Of course, performance is often referred to the stock market, and we also do see that there is a better stock performance for employees, for workplaces, excuse me, for organizations that are working with Great Place to Work. But this is just besides the point for today. So today we really want to focus on the performance in the market when it comes to pride retention and referrals, where the best workplaces this year outperform the average Swiss employers by 25%.
Yeah, and again, in this slide, we can really see how all the work that organizations which really foster great workplace cultures do pays off. Because as we can already see, pride, so the entire dimension of pride has an endorsement rate of 91%. That means 9 out of 10 people in great workplaces are really proud of what they do in everyday life. And again, I think, of course, the data shows a lot of insights, and I could talk about this slide alone for 2 hours, but that's not what it is about today. I think we also can all really identify with what you see on this screen, because if I'm proud of my organization that I work for, I don't plan on leaving, do I? I want to stay here. I want to work here for a long time. So employee retention in organizations that have a good workplace culture is higher, and that is so hugely important, especially in environments as nowadays where everything is so fast-paced and loss of knowledge can be really, really detrimental for performance of a culture. So retention is such a huge and important aspect of it, which can be strongly influenced by how you perceive the organization you work for. And of course, keyword skilled labor shortage. Of course, not everyone has this to the same degree, but if I'm proud for an organization that I work for, I'm way more likely to recommend to my friends, which maybe have skills that are very beneficial and valuable for this organization, that, hey, maybe you should send an application, come work with us. I mean, it's just two very important factors for performance driving factors for organizations. And it's really nice to see that really fostering a good workplace culture and also investing in good workplace culture has great consequences, not only for the employees and employee satisfaction, which is probably kind of a given, but also for the organization itself and its goals and its vision.
I think I could also talk about this slide forever. Yeah. It's one of my favorites, not only because it looks very nice, but also because it's really nice to see what the differences are and how trust is really beneficial for pride retention and referrals as well.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. It's super, super interesting. And what you can also see here is what we just talked about for the past 10 minutes, just summarized in one big, nice slide. Great workplaces start with great leadership. Great leadership shapes how employees perceive the place they work for. How employees perceive the place they work for strongly shapes how they work with each other, how they perceive the company itself, and how they promotes the company externally, because let's be honest, your employees are probably your best marketing tool. If they are happy, your organization is happy. And if your employees are happy, this of course promotes a good performance in your organizations. But now we just talked about a lot of this abstract data, which, as already said, this database is 76,000 answers or invitations of employees. So this is really a huge data pool. And while these information are incredibly important and detrimental to understand how the market develops and what is really going on a global scale, we at Great Place to Work think that it is also very important to highlight some exceptional organizations which can already be a shining example of what you can do based on this information and based on workplace culture innovation.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're going to talk about now is we're trying to show you the key takeaways that we got from awarded organizations, especially from Hilti, APP, Unternehmensberatung, and Go Security, because these are the 3 organizations that received the Great Place to Work Spotlight Award for leadership, innovation culture, and values, respectively.
Yeah. And we can really learn a lot from those organizations, but not only from those organizations, but also really from these 3 topics and issues that we are going to talk about now at the end of this webinar, which first of all, we want to go into leadership. So leadership effectiveness as one of those key aspects of driving good workplace culture is an incredibly important foundation. That's of course, first of all, but also, well, what exactly is leadership effectiveness and how can an organization do that? Hilti is a great example of showing how an organization can do that, because at Hilti, due to, of course, one of the challenges of such a huge organization with so many employees and many locations is to have this unified leadership perspective and really making sure that every single person knows where are we going, how are we getting there, what am I doing to get there. That is something that is very important, that leaders can show these important information by an example, and Hilti really invests a lot of time and energy in a good communication concept and a good strategic clarity, so that they empower and enable their people to move forward and live those goals and visions. And that, as you can see, really shows in their data, and that is also why the Spotlight Award for them is very well deserved. In every single statement tying into that dimension, you can see that they are 25% or more above the representative benchmark, which would consist like our baseline, which we compare those efforts to, which definitely are paying out.
And I think what for me as a marketing and communications background, with the marketing communications background, is the internal communication aspect. So really management that keeps all the people informed. I think this is something that many organizations can learn and focus on to really get everyone on board.
Yeah, that's very well summarized. Once again, I think this is really also such an important perspective to see, like, these 2 aspects. Of course, we can see a lot of things from our data, but it's also very much how it is perceived and how it is lived in everyday life. And I think this is also a great handover to our second aspect or key aspect of workplace culture, which we want to highlight today, which is values. And when I talk about values, I really mean what is lived in everyday life. What do you perceive when you come into this office, and not what is on the website in the About Us section, because there are so many organizations which have an amazing About Us section, but if you would walk into their offices, you probably wouldn't feel that. One organization which is also one of our great workplaces this year, APP Unternehmensberatung AG, is really one of those places where you can feel the values they live, because they live and breathe their values. And this also really shows in their data, because they really tie into having independence and autonomy for their employees, because they believe in expertise and importance of living and giving the room for living expertise, which shows because decisions are made with the employees, and the employees really agree with that to 91%, which is 50% above the representative benchmark. That's a crazy achievement. That's really great. But also in other aspects where they are really showing that you can live your values every single day in your workplace culture.
And especially in the case of APP Unternehmensberatung, what we see on their website in the About Us section that you mentioned before is they're talking about their values, the Wertepaare that they have. And here, for example, one of them would be they are independent and self-determined. And for us, it's just super nice and interesting to see that really being independent, also trusting the people, is reflected in their results of their employee survey. So their employees really believe that the values that they have on this About Us section are true, because they're anchored in everyday life.
Yeah. One of the values that APP also has is fostering innovation. However, for innovation, we have one last and separate spotlight, which is Go Security AG. And yeah, Go Security AG really is a place where we at Great Place to Work think that they are a living example for a good innovation culture, also, and especially also to handle innovation in a way where not everything that has, or yeah, everyone has this opportunity to really gets the education, get the baseline, gets the time, and also gets the passion and the support to innovate in their work life, in everyday life. And this pays off hugely. You can see every single aspect relating to innovation. Their employees really say, yes, every single one is fully on board with this, which is very, very important. And of course, one of the very key aspects which can lead, or which leads in this case to such a positively perceived innovation culture, is how the values, the leadership is lived, how this foundation is given. And this is just such a great example to see the consequences of such a workplace culture.
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to innovation culture, sometimes it's really hard to grasp. So what exactly is it? Is innovation successful because it happens, or do we have like any KPIs? And just last week, we had the event with Go Security where they visited our offices and talked to a handful of clients, of other clients of Great Place to Work, to how they're going about their innovation culture, how this works. And it was super interesting to hear that they don't really have like a structured concept. So what they told us is it works because their culture and everyone thinks and everyone wants to get better, to give their best, to also make their products better. So this is something that, next to, of course, things they have from a structural perspective, really is lived. So every employee thinks this one step further, and how can we get there, and how can we do it? And this really comes from like this bottom-up approach, which is also fostered and enabled by, again, the leadership aspect.
Yeah, and you had a great key point there, because we already had the pleasure to talk to Go Security about what exactly they do for their Spotlight Awards. Of course, there are also Spotlight Awards coming up for our two other aspects, which are leadership, effectiveness, and values. And if you are interested in those, you should check our website to see how those are coming up, because that's also a great opportunity to exchange with other organizations and to get some first-hand experiences, what can be done with the right mindset and innovation and culture. Yeah, and this really, 27 minutes is what it takes to become great. But just to recap everything we just went through, first thing it becomes to be great is have a unified foundation for your organization. We see how incredibly important that is in our organizations. Really be aware, what is it that we want to do? Why do we want to do it? How do we do it? And then when you have that, live this by example, have a good foundation of leadership, have credible leadership, have fair leadership, and have respectful leadership that really enables the employees to fully be themselves. If you do that, you have probably lots of employees that are really proud of what you do. And if you have proud employees that really like what they do and like the organization they work for, you have a good workplace culture. If you have a good workplace culture, you have a lot of basis and foundation for innovation, for development, for external ways to shine bright as an organization. And if you have that, you most likely also benefit in your performance as an organization. If you are interested in becoming one of the great workplaces because you feel like, hey, this is all we already do, like we are great, congratulations. Maybe we can see you on the list next year. If you want more information on that, also a lot of it on our website, together with our data insights and many, many more fantastic things that Lorena from Marketing and Communications writes. So just go ahead and find us there. And that was it from our Data Insights 2024. We are very, very happy to answer any questions coming up now.
Yeah, I think we already have the first question, and we were asked if we can share any insights on the difference when it comes to innovation culture between smaller and larger companies.
Yes, there are. And it's a fantastic question. Thank you so much for asking it, because I think this is really one of the aspects where we can also really see the different strengths and challenges of different organizations, because In smaller in smaller organizations, we very often see that trying to over-structurize innovation is kind of hindering because it feels too bureaucratic. It's more important that innovation can really just be one of the living and breathing things in everyday life. And because there are not that many stakeholders, this is also something that is really possible and should be really valued and pushed. In larger organizations, we often have a little bit of a different thing, because while innovation on a small scale is also very much important that it is lived and a very important prerequisite for the bigger things, systematic big innovation led by employees needs the right tools and needs the right room. So this also very, very important thing to understand. I'm not telling you that you should artificially create think tanks and force like 5 randomly selected employees to go in there for 2 times a week and discuss. That's not how innovation is built. Innovation is built by enabling employees to have systematic ways to push their suggestions in everyday life. Some great examples we see in organizations that we get to survey is, for example, like innovation intranet pages where ideas can be thrown in, ideas can be liked, can be pushed, can be commented, there can be work groups built. But it is very important that if you want to do something like that, and that if you happen to be a larger organization, that you give your employees the room for that and don't expect them to do that on top of their work that they already do. But yes, long story short, there are differences.
Great. So if there are no other questions, it's good for us, because this means we hopefully have been very clear in what we were trying to explain to you. And one question that we have received during the webinar is if the presentation and results will be publicly available. Yes, of course. By, as mentioned in the beginning, scanning this QR code, you can just get the access to the full data insights, also with some more written explanations than we have done in this webinar. And yeah, so we thank you everyone for your time and staying with us today here. And yeah, I think we will finish for today and see you soon. Bye.